Okay, let's get into it. We're doing a deep dive today into Leviticus chapter 11. It's this really specific set of ancient rules about food, animals, and what was considered clean or unclean. Pretty fascinating stuff when you look closely.
Absolutely. This chapter basically outlines the regulations given, to Moses and Aaron for the Israelites.
Yeah.
It really draws some sharp lines about which animals you could eat, which you couldn't, and even how you could become unclean just by contact.
The detail is just incredible. Let's start on land. What were the absolute core requirements for a land animal to be considered clean, okay to eat?
Right, so the text is super precise here. For a land animal to be clean, it needed two things, no exceptions. It had to have a split hoof, one that's completely divided, and it had to chew the cud. Both.
Both. So like just one wasn't good enough. You couldn't just chew the cud.
Nope, needed the whole package. And the text even calls out specific examples that failed the test. It mentions the camel, the coney, that's like a rock badger, and the rabbit. They all chew the cud,
Okay.
but they don't have that fully split hoof. So unclean.
Got it. So they have one trait but not the other. What else?
And then there's the pig.
Ah, the pig.
The pig actually has the split hoof, completely divided,
Right.
but it doesn't chew the cud. So, again, fails the test. Unclean.
And the rule about these unclean animals wasn't just maybe don't eat them. It sounds stronger.
Oh, much stronger. The command is very clear. You must not eat their meat or touch their carcasses. They are unclean for you.
Wow. Even touching the dead ones. That's a key point. The uncleanness spreads through contact.
Exactly. It's not just about ingestion.
Okay, let's shift gears. What about things living in the water? Seas, streams. Was it just as complicated?
Actually, no. The rule for water creatures is, well, simpler on the surface, but just as strict. Anything living in the water had to have both fins and scales.
Fins and scales. So things like catfish, shellfish, eels.
All out. Anything in the seas or streams without both fins and scales. The text calls them detestable.
Detestable. That's a strong word.
It really is. The instruction is you are to detest them. And again, you must not eat their meat and you must detest their carcasses. If it's in the water and lacks fins and scales, according to Leviticus 11, it's detestable, period.
That really emphasizes the separation, doesn't it? Okay, from water to the air. Birds. Now here it seems different. No physical criteria like hooves or scales mentioned.
For birds, it's different. The text doesn't give like a general physical rule. Instead, it just lists specific birds that are considered detestable and shouldn't be eaten.
And it's quite a list, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it's long. You've got the eagle, the vulture, the black vulture, the red kite, any kind of black kite, any kind of raven.
So lots of predators and scavengers, it sounds like.
Mostly, yeah. Then there's the horned owl, screech owl, gull, any kind of hawk, the little owl, the cormorant, the great owl. It keeps going.
Keep going.
White owl, desert owl, osprey, the stork, any kind of heron, the hoopoe. And interestingly, the bat is included in this list of forbidden flying things.
Yeah. A bat. Okay, grouping that with birds is interesting in itself. And the reason given is just they're detestable.
Essentially, yes. The text says, these are the ones you are to detest among the birds. They shall not be eaten because they are detestable. It's a declaration.
Feels like a different logic than for the land and sea creatures, more based on maybe known behavior or symbolism.
Could be. It suggests a categorization based on perhaps observation or existing cultural ideas about purity.
Okay, let's crawl down to the smallest creatures mentioned, insects. There's a rule here too, right? But with a twist.
Yes, insects get a mention. The general rule is pretty straightforward, actually. All flying insects that walk on all fours are to be detestable to you.
Walk on all fours. So most flying insects.
Seems like it covers a lot, yeah. But then comes the exception.
The hopping exception.
Exactly. The exception is for those flying insects that walk on all fours, but also have jointed legs above their feet for, hopping on the ground.
Like locusts and grasshoppers?
Precisely. The text names them. Any kind of locust, katydid, cricket, or grasshopper, those specific types are okay to eat.
But anything else winged with 4 legs?
Still detestable, so a very specific allowance there.
This chapter really digs into the idea of becoming unclean, not just by eating, but by touch. We mentioned touching carcasses of unclean land animals. What else?
Right, the touching aspect is crucial. The basic idea is if you touch the carcass of certain animals, you become unclean until evening. This definitely applies to those land animals we talked about that don't meet the hoof cud criteria.
Okay.
It also applies to animals that walk on all fours but use their paws, like cats, dogs, bears, if they were relevant there, or smaller pod animals.
So contact with a dead weasel or something.
Yes, unclean until evening. And here's another layer. Even clean animals, animals you can eat, if they die on their own, maybe from disease or old age, touching that carcass also makes you unclean until evening. And there's one more detail. If you actually pick up certain carcasses, the text isn't always specific which ones, but implies the main unclean ones. You don't just become unclean, you also have to wash your clothes.
Wash your clothes and you're still unclean till evening.
Correct. So contact with death itself, even permitted animals if they die naturally, creates this temporary state of ritual impurity.
Okay, this next part is where the detail level just goes off the charts, the contamination rules. What happens if one of these dead, unclean things falls onto, say, everyday objects?
Yeah, this shows how deeply this purity concept could affect daily life. First, it lists a few more examples of unclean swarming things that move on the ground.
More examples.
Yeah, like the weasel, the rat, different kinds of lizards. The gecko, the monitor lizard, the wall lizard, skink, chameleon. Touching any of these when they're dead makes you unclean till evening.
Okay, standard rule, but the contamination.
Right, so if one of these dead creatures, say, a dead rat falls on something.
Like my wooden bowl. Or a piece of cloth.
Exactly. If it falls on an article of wood, cloth, hide, or sackcloth, basically, common materials, that item becomes unclean. It has to be put in water, stays unclean till evening, and then it's clean again. So washable things can be purified.
Okay, that makes sense. Wash it. Wait, it's good. But what about something like pottery? A clay jar?
That's where it gets much more severe. If one of these dead creatures falls into an earthenware pot, a clay vessel,
Yeah.
everything in the pot becomes unclean. And the pot itself, it must be broken.
Broken. You can't just wash it like the wooden bowl.
Nope. The text is explicit. Break it. It seems clay was seen as maybe absorbing the uncleanness permanently.
Wow. That's a serious consequence for an accident.
It is. And any food in that pot that had water on it becomes unclean.
Yeah.
Any drinkable liquid from that pot is unclean. And it extends further if the carcass touches an oven or a cooking stove, typically also made of clay or earth.
Let me guess, they have to be broken too.
You got it. Broken up. Unclean. So yeah, a dead lizard falling in the wrong place could mean destroying your cooking pot or even your oven.
The level of detail is just mind-boggling. They must have shaped daily caution in a big way. Were there any exceptions? Things that didn't get contaminated so easily?
Yes, a couple of important ones. A spring, or a cistern basically, a large water source remains clean even if a carcass falls in it.
Okay, the water source itself is okay?
But crucially, the person who touches or removes the carcass still becomes unclean until evening. The source is fine, the person isn't.
Right. Any other exceptions?
Seeds for planting. If they're dry and a carcass falls on them, the seeds remain clean.
Ah, okay.
Unless water had already been put on the seeds. If the seeds were wet when the carcass touched them, then they become unclean for you.
It's just so specific, down to whether the seed was wet or dry.
It really is. Granular is the word.
So after laying out all these rules, land, sea, air, insects, touching, contamination, the chapter circles back to the big why. What's the ultimate reason giving for all this?
The text connects it all directly to holiness. It says, do not defile yourselves by any of these creatures. Do not make yourselves unclean or be made unclean by them.
Okay, avoid defilement.
And then comes the core reason, the command. I am the Lord your God. Consecrate yourselves and be holy because I am holy.
Be holy because I am holy. That's the motivation.
That's the stated motivation, yes. It repeats it slightly differently later, too. I am the Lord who brought you up out of Egypt to be your God. Therefore be holy because I am holy. So the whole purpose, as presented here, is about distinguishing clean from unclean, permitted from forbidden, as a way for the people to mirror God's holiness and be set apart, consecrated to Him.
So wrapping this up, looking back at this incredibly intricate chapter, what does exploring Leviticus 11 offer us, today?
Well, I think it gives us a really powerful insight into the worldview of the ancient Israelites. You see how concepts like purity, holiness, distinction weren't just abstract ideas. They were woven into the absolute fabric of daily life, down to the smallest, most practical details: what you ate, what you touched, what happened if a mouse died in your pantry. It shows this intense commitment to living out their relationship with God in tangible ways. It really brings that idea of lived religion to life. And it leaves you, the listener, with this thought pulled straight from the end of the chapter. How do these seemingly practical rules, don't eat this, break that pot, if a lizard falls in it, connect so profoundly to that immense call, be holy because I am holy?
What does that link suggest about holiness itself as Leviticus presents it? Maybe it's not just about grand gestures, but about the mindful details of everyday existence. Something to think about.